Parents are getting it all wrong with gentle parenting, especially with their sensory kids. In this video, I'm going to tell you 7 gentle parenting mistakes parents are making and how to fix them. I'm Lisa Chan, a child behavior expert and a parent coach. I have over a decade of experience as a pediatric occupational therapist. I have helped hundreds of families who are struggling with their child's sensory needs and big emotions. And many of these families are using the approach of gentle parenting, and it's completely backfiring. I've helped them to transform their parenting approach, moving away from this really modernized, trendy type of parenting style and actually using effective parenting techniques that work with your sensory child needs. So as a parent raising a child with sensory needs, you're facing a lot of either avoidant or seeking behaviors that are very disruptive in your day-to-day life. Your child might be complaining that their clothes are too itchy, things are too tight, the food doesn't taste good, there's something slimy about it. They're constantly complaining, they're constantly avoiding different tasks throughout their day because they just do not like the sensory input. Or your child is constantly seeking sensory input from their environment. They're like literally jumping off walls, they're climbing on furniture, they just cannot sit still during homework time, during meal times. It's like you're running after them, trying to get them to sit down, and it's driving you nuts, it's leaving you frustrated, and everyone in the house just feels like it's complete chaos. Now, meanwhile, you've been hearing about this trendy new parenting style called gentle parenting, where we use a more gentle approach, where we listen to our child's feelings and emotions, we validate them, and we try to always support them through whatever challenges that they're facing. This definitely sounds good so far, but the practical challenge with gentle parenting is that you end up getting stuck in a cycle where you're constantly catering to your child's emotions and their needs, and you get nowhere. This is where you start to feel like you're losing control of situations and your child's emotions are taking over the house. But you were told gentle parenting is supposed to work. It's supposed to help your child feel seen, feel heard, feel validated. And you know how important that is because you likely grew up with the opposite type of parent. A lot of us millennials, we grew up with parents who are more authoritarian, where they kind of just told us what to do. They didn't really care about our emotions, how we felt in that moment. And so we're trying to do better. We're trying to help our kids. So when they're starting to show these avoidant behaviors, they're complaining they don't like something, you try to give them all these different options. When they're moving around, you're trying to use a gentle tone of voice, you're trying to get them to settle down, but they're still amping up and you're feeling like you're losing complete control. What this also ends up feeling like is that you're starting to fear your child's emotions and reactions, because anytime you start to try to push a little bit, you're starting to feel big reactions from them. So then you're trying to just kind of dance around them, that it ends up feeling you're walking on eggshells. Now you've gotten in this cycle. It's been months, maybe even years of you behaving this way with your child, and you're starting to feel powerless. And you're starting to question, do you even have authority as a parent over your child? This uncertainty is leaving you feeling stressed, miserable, and also making you feel like a failure as a parent. As a parent raising a child with sensory needs, it's common to feel stuck and to question if you're doing things the right way for your child. Why? Because parenting a child with sensory needs is not like parenting any other child. It is more challenging. There are so many factors that you have to consider when parenting your kid. So what you need are practical tools and sensory strategies to help you out in your parenting journey. And I've got you covered. I've put together free guides and resources, and it's all on my website. These tools are going to help you to manage all of the different sensory challenges that you're facing with your child. All of this is on my website, which you can click in the description box. Now let's get into the 7 biggest gentle parenting mistakes parents are making with their sensory kids and what to do instead. Number 1 is not setting enough structure and boundaries for your child. Kids with sensory needs get overwhelmed much more easily because of the sensory input from their environment, because of different demands that are put on them. So when we don't set enough structures and boundaries for them, and we give them too many options, it actually adds to the overwhelmed feeling that they're having. And this was what often leads to the big meltdowns and tantrums that you're seeing. So if your child is struggling every morning to get dressed, to pick out something that they need to wear for school, By letting them choose from an unlimited closet, this is actually going to add more to the overwhelm. What you need to do instead is set up a proper routine, getting them to plan it out the night before. Pick out 2 options that you can choose from in the morning, or actually pick out the one option so that in the morning, when they're usually feeling more overwhelmed because they have a little bit more stress trying to get through the morning routine and out the door, it's better to just have that one option readily available, and you know it's the thing that they like and that is going to make them feel comfortable, that this is actually going to help them get through their day. If your child's struggling to sit down during homework time, they're often fidgeting, moving around, going from one room to the next room, and everything is just everywhere. Having a structure and routine for them is going to help them to focus, giving them a visual schedule for them to follow, where you get them to move around, move things. So have like an actual like Bristol board and tape it to your wall, have a schedule, and you have task 1, task 2, task 3, and you get them to move and actually check off that first task and come right back to their seat. Go to the task again, check off the next thing that they've done, right? Incorporating that movement of them going back and forth is going to give them that sensory input, but it's also giving them a structure for them to follow. And that's going to help them to stay focused and actually get things done. Mistake number 2 is trying to solve everything too fast. So when our kids are feeling uncomfortable, it's very normal for us as parents to want to fix that feeling of discomfort. We obviously don't want to see our kids in distress, and we want to help them out. But when we try to solve the problem right away, we swoop in too fast, we overdo things. We start to throw solution after solution to try to solve their problem, and we end up making the situation much more overwhelming. Your child might be a bit of a picky eater, and so you're offering them their meal and they don't like it. So then you're trying to understand and validate that feeling because you know they have that sensory sensitivity. So you offer them something else. You want meatballs instead? Do you want a piece of bread instead? Do you want this, that, the other? And all you're doing is actually overwhelming their already overwhelmed nervous system. Now, this type of behavior as parents, it comes from a good place. We know how hard it is for your child to feel comfortable around that food or whatever it is, and we want to try to give them what it is that they want. So we're coming from a place of love. But when we do this too fast and we try to swoop in too much, it just creates more chaos. Instead, what we need to do is learn to take a pause. When we see that our child's feeling uncomfortable and you can see the emotions starting to build up, you can see that they're getting frustrated, we don't have to just swoop in to try to make things better for them. Taking that pause, and if you're having a hard time with the pause, I always encourage parents to literally take a deep breath in and out 5 times to help them give that space between them and their child. Because what we're actually doing here is actually giving our children room to kind of work through some of that discomfort that they're feeling. And that's how we build frustration tolerance to things. If we don't let our kids feel the hard feelings and we kind of swoop in all the time, we're basically numbing them from that feeling, and they're never going to learn how to actually work through it. Mistake number 3 with gentle parenting is never saying no. So let's face it, raising a child with sensory needs is difficult. They have certain sensitivities, they have certain needs, they want things a certain way. And so when we say no, it oftentimes leads into a meltdown. And so we want to try to avoid those big feelings. We don't want them to feel frustrated, that we often avoid saying no, but this actually harms our kids in the long run. Your child starts to see that if they keep pushing you, you're eventually going to cave and just give in. This is how many parents who raise sensory needs kids end up losing their authority in their household, and their children end up running the show. So here's what you can do instead. So it's okay to tell your child no, they can't do something, but instead you can do X, Y, and Z. Now, depending on your child's age or how they are processing information, I would stick to about 2 or 3 options. This gives your child something to focus on, and that way it can help to reduce the overwhelmed feeling that they're having. So they know that instead of having a multitude of options, there are 2 or 3 options in front of them that they can choose from. And this ultimately gives you boundaries around what it is that they are allowed to choose, and it's not a free-for-all. Mistake number 4 is always using a soft voice for the sake of being gentle and sensitive towards your child. You might have a child who is quite sensitive to movement, so they might be afraid of getting in the car, or they might be afraid of going up an escalator. Maybe they're afraid of heights and they don't want to climb up the playground, and they always want to just stay low on the ground. They don't want to try things. Maybe they're really sensitive to touch. So someone kind of just walks past them, kind of like taps their arm by accident, and they have a big reaction to that. In that moment, your child is feeling very uncomfortable and maybe even scared. But using a soft voice in that moment is not reassuring. What they need most in that moment is a sturdy leader, a sturdy parent that's going to help them feel more confident. And that comes with having a sturdy and firm voice. So here's an example. Oh, I know that must be really scary for you. I know, why don't we keep trying? Right? That was really soft. You're kind of crunching your face. You're kind of trying to be so compassionate towards your child. But remember, in that moment, your child is actually scared because of their sensory sensitivities. And so when you speak to them that way, it actually makes them feel less confident in themselves that they can actually do something. Instead, you want to come off with a more sturdy, more firm tone by saying something like, I know this might feel overwhelming for you, but I know you can do it. That is a completely different tone of voice that feels more empowering for your child, that they can actually work through their sensitivities, that they can actually do something that makes them feel uncomfortable. And ultimately, that's how we want to raise our kids so that they feel confident and can be resilient kids when they are in the real world. Mistake number 5 is prioritizing your child's emotions over rules. So when your child has sensory needs, I know a lot of things can trigger your child into a meltdown, and they might start kicking and screaming and hitting and throwing things. And we want to be understanding in that moment. We want to help them feel like we get that they're feeling uncomfortable, and we want to validate those feelings of frustration and overwhelm. When you're raising a child with sensory needs, I know a lot of things can trigger them into a state where they're dysregulated and they're having a meltdown because of it. But we want to, first of all, acknowledge the feelings and emotions that they do have in that moment. But at the same time, if they are acting out in behaviors that are very inappropriate and unsafe, we don't just allow those behaviors to happen. We need to start seeing things from a sensory lens. If your child is acting out because something is so uncomfortable to them, we don't just go, okay, that's fine because you have sensory needs. I'm going to let you throw things all around the house. We want to be proactive in this and find the right sensory tools and strategies that are going to help them learn how to calm their bodies down. We're going to find the right sensory accommodations to help them feel more comfortable so we don't get to the state of inappropriate behaviors and meltdowns that are completely out of control. So for example, if your child's coming home after school and you can see they're tense because they had such a big, overwhelming day, now they come home and they completely melt down. They're screaming, they're punching you because you just asked them to, put their backpacks on the side rather than the middle of the floor. You don't just allow them to behave in that way. You have to start seeing it from, they're in a state of dysregulation. So you can start approaching things by implementing sensory strategies when they get home so that the behaviors do not get to a point where they're out of control like this, right? So it's about being proactive in the process of raising your child with sensory needs rather than being reactive in that moment and just kind of being standoffish because you think, well, in gentle parenting, we got to let our kids feel all the feelings and emotions and we can't intervene because, that's what they're going through and we don't want them to feel bad about it. That is not how we handle sensory kids' emotions. We need to proactively put in the sensory strategies in place so that we don't get our kids to a state of overwhelm and have no tools to help them manage and thus engage in these inappropriate behaviors. So what this looks like is through a a sensory diet that's going to help give them that sensory input, that's going to help them calm their bodies down, feel more grounded, feel like they're decompressing from after having such a long day at school. So what a sensory diet looks like in this video, we're not going to get into that. If you're really interested about how to set up that sensory diet for yourself, you can check out this video all about how to set up the proper sensory diet for your child. This is the video. You can also check it out in the description link. Mistake number 6 is over-relying on rewards. It's definitely tempting to use bribes and rewards to try to get your sensory kid to do the thing you're asking them to do. But in the long run, using bribes and rewards do not teach your child the long-term skill that they need. Rewards end up teaching them to rely on external motivation rather than intrinsic motivation and also sensory tools. So if we're constantly using things like extra gaming time or extra TV time for them to get through their day, we're actually teaching them that they need these things in order for them to work through their discomfort. That doesn't solve the sensory need that's underlying all the problems that you're seeing. It's only masking it with the rewards that you're giving them. If your child's refusing to go to school and you're using rewards like you're gonna get extra gaming time if you get yourself ready and out the door, again, we're relying on that external motivation system. And this doesn't get to the root of your child's sensory needs and why they're avoiding all of the sensory input that is happening in their morning routine. Instead, what we need to do is set up more structure and routine for them, create a more calming routine in the morning to get their bodies ready so that they can handle the sensory input. Because if we're just relying on the reward to try to motivate them, eventually that reward is not going to be as powerful as the sensory sensitivity that they have, right? And you're eventually going to get stuck in a position where the reward just stopped working. And now you have a child who is really struggling because of their sensory needs. And you haven't solved the problem because you've been masking it with the rewards, hoping that that's going to work and take them through, the school year. But as your kid gets older, the rewards are only going to have to get bigger and bigger, better and better. And trust me, you don't want to do that. You're going to be broke. So don't rely on this reward strategy that people are telling you is the way to parent your kids. Okay, mistake number 7, this is for you parents. And it is catering to your child's needs and not taking care of yourself. Raising a child with sensory needs is very hard. It is tiring, it is draining. I've seen it with hundreds of the families I work with, so I know how difficult it is. It requires you to be very patient. It requires you to be planning ahead of time all the time. The mental capacity, the mental load from raising a child with sensory needs is a lot. And so if you're not taking care of yourself in the process, you are going to get lost in all of this. You are going to feel burnt out and you're not going to have the mental, physical, emotional capacity to do what it is you need to do to actually support your child. So taking care of yourself is really about making sure that you have enough rest and that you're doing things that are helping you to feel recharged. I know this sounds much easier said than done because many of you guys might be the primary parent that has so many things on your plate right now. You might be a single parent having to take care of your child and raise them. And so it's really important to then reach out to the people around you to find that village. I know we don't have that anymore these days, but you really need to build that village around you so that you can have the support that you need and build in that time for yourself so that you can recharge yourself. So when done right, gentle parenting does work for our sensory needs, just not this permissive style of gentle parenting. If you want free tools and resources, make sure you head over to my website. I have lots of resources that are for your sensory needs kids that you can apply and start utilizing today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you want more resources and tools to help you out, remember to like and subscribe to my videos so you don't miss out on videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.